The image of Jesus as a white man is one of the most pervasive misrepresentations in Western Christianity. While Jesus and his disciples were Jewish, most Christian iconography, artifacts, and publications depict them as white Europeans. Jesus was born in Bethlehem around 4 BCE and lived in first-century Palestine, a region with deep cultural ties to Africa due to its proximity to Egypt and its long history of interactions with African civilizations. In early churches' paintings and publications, Jesus was depicted and portrayed as brown or bronze skin, reflecting the reality of his environment. These depictions, found in ancient Christian artwork dating back to the 3rd and 4th centuries, stand in sharp contrast to the white European images often seen in Western art. Early Christian catacomb paintings, such as those discovered in the catacombs of Rome, depicted Jesus with features closer to the people of the Middle East and North Africa, not the fair-skinned European image we recognize today. The Western portrayals of Jesus, particularly those created during the Renaissance in the 15th and 16th centuries, shifted from historical accuracy to artistic preferences and bias. These artistic choices shaped the Western Christian imagination, perpetuating the whitewashed image of Christ that continues to dominate Christian iconography. European artists used white skin in their depictions of Jesus as a symbol of purity and divine goodness in an effort of imposing their preferences and cultural values. One of the most famous examples of this is Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, where Jesus and his disciples are depicted with fair skin, reinforcing the idea that white people were closer to God. The choice of light skin in these works of art was a deliberate attempt to convey purity and moral righteousness linked to the racial hierarchies of 15th century Europe, in which whites were considered superior to other races. This connection between whiteness and divinity also helped justify the social, political, and racial power structures of the time. Over time, this artistic convention became entrenched, linking Jesus with European ideals of power, purity, and moral superiority, and influencing the image of Christ for generations. Revelation 1:14 and 15 describes Jesus' hair as being like wool and his feet like burnished bronze, which suggests a darker complexion. These descriptions, combined with the historical context of the region, suggest that Jesus was likely darker skinned than the fair-haired, blue-eyed figure that became dominant in Western art. Such artistic depictions of Jesus were historically inaccurate, but served to reinforce the cultural biases of European societies, which created a Eurocentric vision of Jesus, stripping him of his true identity. Early artists, such as the 6th century mosaic artists in Ravenna, Italy, often depicted Jesus with European features, as seen on Christ the Pantocrator art. By the time of the Renaissance in the 15th and 16th centuries, artists like Michelangelo, Raphael, and Da Vinci began to establish a Eurocentric portrayal of Jesus, shaping Western Christianity's visual representation of Christ. These depictions became so widespread that they eventually dominated Western Christianity and spread to colonies, influencing the global distortion of the image of Jesus. The spread of the white Jesus image was further fueled by European colonization and trade, which allowed these depictions to reach far beyond Europe. By the late 16th and early 17th centuries, European powers such as Spain, Portugal, and later Britain began exporting Christian art, which included the image of a white Jesus, to their colonies in the Americas, Asia, and Africa. These images of a white Jesus were not just religious symbols, but also tools of cultural and racial domination. As European powers expanded their territories through colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade, they enforced the notion of European superiority by depicting Jesus as a white European figure. And this helped justify the exploitation of indigenous and African populations by presenting the Christian God as aligned with European identity, further deepening racial divisions. European artists discovered that white depictions of Jesus appealed to their European patrons, helping to increase their commercial success. During the 18th and 19th centuries, as Europe became more involved in the global slave trade and imperial expansion, images of a white Jesus found a ready audience among Europeans who saw the fair-skinned Jesus as a reflection of their own cultural and racial values. Artists such as Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres and other neoclassical painters often depicted Jesus in ways that catered to European tastes, reinforcing the association between white skin and holiness. As European Christians distanced themselves from Jews, particularly during periods of intense anti-Semitism, the need to detach Jesus from his Jewish identity grew. The rise of anti-Jewish sentiment in Europe, particularly during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, led to efforts to present Jesus as a more European figure who fit their ideals of purity and moral righteousness. The association of Jesus with whiteness created a racialized religious hierarchy, positioning white Europeans as spiritually superior and making the case that non-white populations were spiritually inferior. This portrayal of Jesus also played into the belief that white Europeans were the bearers of Christian truth and divine power, further supporting the belief in racial hierarchies. As a result, the image of a white Jesus became a foundational element in the ideology of white supremacy. Warner Sallman's 1941 painting The Head of Christ is often cited as a major milestone in the popularization of the white Jesus image. This iconic image of a fair-skinned, European-looking Jesus became ubiquitous in Christian culture, particularly in the United States during the mid-20th century. Sallman's painting was widely reproduced and distributed on prayer cards, posters, and other religious artifacts, reaching millions of Christians worldwide. Its popularity helped solidify the image of Jesus as a white European figure in the minds of generations of Christians. The influence of Sallman's image is undeniable. It shaped the visual identity of Jesus for much of the 20th century, becoming one of the most recognized depictions of Christ worldwide. The portrayal of Jesus as white has become a tool for racial and religious division, perpetuating the idea that white Europeans are divinely favored. It has shaped Christian theology and racial attitudes in ways that continue to influence cultural and religious discourse today.